My name is Chloe, and I'm 33. I'm standing here, running my hand over the cold, smooth granite of my kitchen island, right in the middle of my very own house. It took me 6 straight years of scrimping, saving, and grinding through extra shifts to afford this place, a dream I've chased ever since my family showed me the door when I was just 18. Then my sister, Olivia, saunters in. Her eyes are sharp and calculating, scanning every detail of what I've built, what I've earned. "This place would be just perfect for my kids," she declares, not as a compliment, but as a statement of fact. Just then, my mother appears behind her, nodding in enthusiastic agreement. If you've ever had your own family try to walk all over you and take what you've earned, let me know in the comments, and make sure you subscribe, because you'll want to see how this all played out when they actually told me to leave my own home. Growing up in our quiet suburban home outside of Denver, it didn't take long for me to understand that the world operated on 2 different sets of rules. One for my older sister, Olivia, and one for me. While she was showered with brand new clothes and whatever the hottest toy was that year, I was taught the art of being grateful for her hand-me-downs and birthday presents that always felt like they were picked up at the last minute from a gas station. Our parents, but especially our mother, had a blindingly obvious soft spot for Olivia. "She just needs a little more support, a little more attention," Mom would always say, ruffling Olivia's hair. Then she'd turn to me. "You're the strong one, Chloe. You can figure things out on your own." It was a label that became a self-fulfilling prophecy. This pattern wasn't just a one-time thing. It was the foundation of our entire childhood. When Olivia's grades slipped, our parents scrambled to hire expensive tutors and immediately absolved her of all her household chores so she could focus. When I brought home a report card filled with straight A's, it wasn't a cause for celebration. It was simply what was expected. "Oh, that's just Chloe being Chloe," they'd say with a little wave of the hand, as if my effort was as natural and unremarkable as breathing. I learned to make myself smaller, to need less, to want less, and most importantly, to expect nothing. The summer after I graduated from high school was the breaking point, the moment the hairline fracture in our family dynamic shattered completely. Olivia, who was 23 at the time, had married her high school sweetheart Mark after an unplanned pregnancy. In what felt like the blink of an eye, they moved back into our parents' house with their infant daughter. Without so much as a conversation, they transformed my bedroom, my sanctuary, the only space that had ever felt truly mine, into a pastel-colored nursery. I was demoted to an old, lumpy sofa in the drafty basement. "College starts for you in August," my mom informed me one morning over breakfast, not even bothering to look up from her newspaper. "We need the space for Olivia and her family now. You'll have to find another place to live." There was no debate. There was no offer of help, no discussion about options, just a cold, hard expectation that at 18 years old, with a meager $1,800 saved from my part-time job at a local diner, I would magically conjure up a place to live, figure out college tuition, and pay for all my own living expenses. My stomach dropped. "But what about the college fund you and Dad always told me about?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. I could still picture the savings bonds they'd proudly shown me when I was a kid. Mom finally looked at me, her expression unreadable. "Oh, that," she said, her tone flat. "We needed to use that for Olivia's wedding." She needed it more than you did. That night, I stuffed every single thing I owned into the trunk and back seat of my beat-up Toyota Corolla, a high school graduation gift from my grandmother. With no plan, no destination, and a profound sense of being utterly alone, I drove to my best friend Sarah's house. Her parents, bless their hearts, let me stay in their spare room until the fall semester began. The next 4 years of my life were a relentless, exhausting blur. I took out a mountain of student loans to cover tuition, but that was only half the battle. To cover rent, food, and books, I worked. I worked too, and for the last 2 years of college, 3 jobs. My day started before dawn at a campus diner, smelling of grease and coffee. My afternoons were spent in the quiet hum of the university library, re-shelving books. My weekends were lost waiting tables at a busy restaurant, and I filled every spare hour I could find tutoring other students in subjects that came easily to me. Sleep wasn't a necessity. It was a luxury I could rarely afford. While I was running myself into the ground, Olivia's family continued to expand. She had twins, and my parents, ever accommodating, renovated their house to make more room, even converting their two-car garage into another bedroom suite. During the rare family gatherings I could actually make it to, Olivia would sigh dramatically and complain about how unbelievably hard motherhood was, while Mom would nod with deep maternal sympathy. No one ever once asked me about my 80-hour work weeks. No one wondered how I was managing to keep my GPA up while running on fumes and sleeping maybe 4 hours a night. After graduation, I landed an entry-level position at a major software company in the city. The starting salary was modest, but I saw the path for growth, and I latched onto it. I moved into a tiny studio apartment so small I could touch both walls if I stretched my arms out. My furniture was a motley collection of items I'd found on the curb or bought for a few dollars at thrift stores. While my new colleagues were going out for happy hours and planning weekend getaways, I stuck to my Spartan lifestyle, funneling every single dollar I could spare into a high-yield savings account. Within 3 years, through sheer grit and long hours, I'd climbed the ladder to a senior analyst position. My new salary finally allowed me to take a full, deep breath. But even then, I didn't change my frugal habits. My goal was a fortress, a rock-solid certainty, a house of my very own, a place where no one could ever tell me to leave, a space that was mine and mine alone. 6 years after starting my career, after a series of promotions and strategic job hops, I was earning a 6-figure salary. My savings account had grown into a formidable sum, and I started to seriously research first-time homebuyer programs. I found a special state initiative for professionals who committed to staying in the area, offering incredible interest rates and reduced down payment requirements. After months buried in paperwork, credit checks, and financial verifications, I was approved. House hunting became my new full-time job. I must have viewed dozens of properties, becoming an amateur expert on foundation issues, outdated electrical systems, and the critical importance of location. And then finally, I found it. A charming 4-bedroom Victorian-style home in a quiet neighborhood with great schools. At $980,000, it pushed my budget to the absolute limit. But the second I walked through the front door and saw the sunlight streaming through the stained glass window on the landing, I knew this was it. It was meant to be mine. Throughout this entire decade-long journey, my family was a ghost in my life. Olivia would pop up with a text message whenever she had a financial emergency, which, funny enough, always seemed to coincide with a major sale at her favorite department stores. Mom's calls were mostly just to update me on Olivia's latest minor accomplishment or to drop subtle hints that I should visit more often, bringing gifts for the kids, of course. Dad, as passive as ever, was just a background presence in the family's ongoing drama. Despite all of this, I invited them all to my housewarming party. There was some small, stubborn part of me that still craved their approval, that still held out hope that they might finally see me. Maybe this beautiful house, this undeniable symbol of success, would make them recognize my worth in a way that my academic and professional achievements never could. As the day of the party approached, I let myself indulge in a little fantasy. I pictured my mom, her eyes wide with genuine pride. I imagined Olivia giving me a real, happy hug. I could almost hear my dad pulling me aside to say, "I always knew you'd do it." I knew it was a long shot, but hope is a stubborn, foolish thing. It persists, even when a lifetime of experience tells it to know better. The morning of my housewarming party was bright and clear, one of those flawless spring days that feels like a promise of new beginnings. Sunlight poured through the large bay windows in my living room, making the original hardwood floors, which I'd spent weeks painstakingly refinishing by hand, glow. This house, a 1920s Victorian with thoughtful modern updates, was the physical embodiment of everything I had worked for since they'd kicked me out 10 years ago. I spent the morning buzzing with nervous energy, putting the final touches on everything. I arranged bouquets of fresh flowers in vases I'd carefully selected, laid out artisanal cheeses and charcuterie on the huge kitchen island, and double-checked that the new sound system was working perfectly. Every corner of this house held a specific dream that was now a reality. The home office, with its future built-in bookshelves, was where I would one day launch the consulting business I'd been mapping out. The spacious guest bedroom meant that friends could finally stay over without being relegated to a couch. And the backyard, though still mostly a patch of dirt and potential, would one day be a garden, producing vegetables and herbs for my kitchen. Sarah was the first to arrive, a full 3 hours early, just as she'd promised, to help with the final prep. Our friendship had only deepened since those first frightening days when her family had so generously taken me in. "This place is absolutely breathtaking, Chloe," she said, spinning around slowly in the middle of my living room. "I always knew you'd do something amazing, but seeing it, this is something else entirely." I ran my hand along the smooth, polished banister of the grand staircase. "I still can't believe it's real," I admitted. "Sometimes I wake up in the morning and for a second, I think I'm still in that tiny apartment with the leaky faucet." As noon approached, my other friends started to trickle in. Co-workers who had become my confidants, new neighbors who were eager to welcome me to the block, and college friends who had been there to witness my struggle firsthand. Every single person who walked through my door brought with them genuine warmth and heartfelt congratulations, filling the house with a positive, joyful energy that made it feel less like a building and more like a home. At 12:30, a full hour before the official start time on the invitation, the doorbell rang with an insistent, demanding pressure, followed by the high-pitched squeal of children's voices and a sharp, "Quiet down," that I recognized instantly. Taking a deep, fortifying breath, I opened the door. There on my porch stood Olivia, her husband Mark, and their 3 children. "Surprise!" Olivia announced, sweeping past me into the entryway. "We came early to help you set up." Her hands, I noted, were completely empty. She ushered her family inside, and the kids immediately shot off in 3 different directions like uncaged animals. "Tyler, Madison, Jackson, don't touch anything," Mark called out in a half-hearted tone. A loud crash from somewhere upstairs suggested his warning was already too late. Olivia's eyes were wide as she took it all in, the high ceilings with their intricate crown molding, the statement chandelier in the foyer, the glimpse of the gourmet kitchen I'd been so excited about. "Wow," she said, her tone making it sound less like a compliment and more like an indictment. "This is quite a place for someone living all by themselves." I chose to ignore the barb. "Thank you," I replied, forcing a smile. It took a long time to find the right one. She continued her inspection, running a finger along a side table as if checking for dust. "It must be nice having all this space to yourself," she mused. "Our little apartment barely fits the 5 of us. Jackson and Tyler have to share a bedroom that's about the size of your entryway." Before I could even think of a response, her 6-year-old daughter, Madison, came thundering down the stairs. "Mommy, I found the perfect bedroom for me. It has a window seat and a huge closet." Olivia just smiled indulgently. "That's wonderful, sweetie. Maybe Aunt Chloe will let you have a sleepover sometime." I started to say, "Actually, that's going to be my home office," but Mark cut me off. He'd emerged from my kitchen with a beer he'd already helped himself to from my fridge. "Chloe, you have to tell me where you got these countertops. They must have cost a fortune." The next hour was a masterclass in passive aggression. Olivia's family treated my house like a public open house they were considering buying. The kids left a trail of sticky fingerprints on the freshly painted walls. Mark tracked mud across the new living room rug, and Olivia made an endless stream of pointed comments about the excessive amount of space for just one person. By the time my other guests started arriving, filling the house with happy chatter and laughter, I was already completely drained from trying to discreetly monitor the children while keeping a pleasant smile plastered on my face. Sarah kept shooting me worried looks every time Olivia made another cutting remark, but I'd just shake my head slightly. This was supposed to be a celebration, and I was determined not to let my family's predictable brand of toxicity ruin it. At 2:15, the doorbell rang again. Through the decorative glass panels of the front door, I recognized my mother's silhouette. That familiar knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach, the same tension I'd felt my entire childhood whenever she was about to witness something I'd accomplished, knowing that she would find some way to diminish it, to twist it into a negative. "Chloe, darling," she said as I opened the door, planting a kiss somewhere in the air near my cheek. "What a lovely little place you've found for yourself." A $980,000 four-bedroom house was hardly little, but I swallowed the correction. "Thanks for coming, Mom." There's food and drinks in the kitchen. She barely gave me a nod before her eyes scanned the room and landed on Olivia. "Oh, there are my grandbabies!" she exclaimed, making a beeline for them without another word to me. Within minutes, she was cooing over the kids and was deep in conversation with Olivia, their heads bent together like two conspirators plotting a coup. As the afternoon wore on, I did my best to focus on my real guests, giving tours of the house and graciously accepting their warm congratulations. But I couldn't shake a feeling of dread, and I couldn't help but notice that Mom and Olivia had disappeared upstairs, along with Mark and the kids. Sarah sidled up to me. "They've been up there for a while," she observed, her voice low. "Want me to go run interference?" I let out a long sigh. "No, it's fine." "I'll go. Can you just make sure everyone has a drink?" As I started up the stairs, I heard my mom's voice drifting down from the master bedroom. "This closet is bigger than the kids' room in your apartment, Olivia. And look at this bathroom. 2 sinks and a separate shower and tub." I heard Olivia's reply, her voice taking on that specific whining quality I knew so well from childhood, the tone that always came right before she got exactly what she wanted. "I know, Mom. It's just so unfair. We're all crammed into that tiny 2-bedroom apartment while Chloe has all this space she doesn't even need." I froze on the landing, my heart pounding in my chest. What was going on? "Well," my mom said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "family should help family. Chloe has always been selfish with her things. Remember how she never wanted to share her toys when she was little? I was 5. I wanted to scream. I was 5 years old. Instead, I stayed silent, listening as my own mother and sister plotted against me, completely unaware that I was standing just a few feet away. This house would be perfect for us," Olivia continued, her voice gaining confidence. "The kids could each have their own room. Mark could use that front room as an office. We'd finally have space to breathe." "And what about Chloe?" my mother asked, though her tone made it clear she was already on board with whatever scheme Olivia was hatching. "She could get a small apartment nearby if she wants to stay in this neighborhood so badly. She doesn't need all this space. It's selfish, really." I literally could not believe what I was hearing. After everything, after kicking me out at 18, after I worked multiple jobs to get through college, after I saved every last penny while they lived comfortably, they were now seriously discussing how I should just give up my house. My house! For Olivia and her family. Before I could storm in and confront them, I heard Olivia say, "Let's go downstairs. I want to make an announcement." I quickly and quietly retreated, rejoining my friends in the living room with a brittle, forced smile stretched across my face. A few minutes later, Olivia descended the stairs, followed by Mom, Mark, and the children, all of them wearing expressions that ranged from smug entitlement, Olivia, to pure excitement, the kids. "Everyone, can I have your attention, please?" Olivia called out, tapping a fork against her wine glass as if she were giving a toast at a wedding. The room gradually fell silent as all our guests turned to face her. "We have some very exciting news to share." As the last of the conversations died down and all eyes were on Olivia, a cold dread washed over me. That self-satisfied smirk on her face, the way my mom stood right beside her with a look of proud anticipation. I had seen this exact scene play out 100 times before. It was always the prelude to a moment where my needs, my wants, my very existence were about to be sacrificed for Olivia's desires. "Mark and I have some wonderful news," Olivia announced, placing a proprietary hand on her eldest son's shoulder. "As most of you know, our little apartment has become way too small for our growing family. 3 active kids need space to run and play." A few of the guests who knew Olivia murmured in agreement, while my own friends just exchanged confused glances. This was supposed to be my housewarming party. "Well," Olivia continued, her voice rising with theatrical excitement, "we won't have to worry about that for much longer. The kids and I are absolutely thrilled to announce that we'll be moving into this beautiful house very soon." A beat of stunned, absolute silence followed her declaration. Then the room erupted in a cacophony of confused whispers. Sarah caught my eye from across the room, her expression a perfect mirror of my own shock and indignation. I just stood there, frozen, the cheese plate I had been about to offer someone forgotten in my hands. "Olivia," I finally managed to say, my voice sounding thin and distant even to my own ears. "What are you talking about?" She turned to me with a look of exaggerated patience, as if she were explaining a very simple concept to a very dense child. "It just makes sense, Chloe. This house has 4 bedrooms and you're just one person. Our apartment can barely fit the 5 of us. The solution is obvious." "The solution to your housing problem is not my house," I said, my voice trembling as I struggled to keep it level. Several of my guests had already started to subtly inch toward the door, sensing the impending explosion of family drama. "Now, Chloe," my mother interjected, stepping forward with that placating, condescending tone she always used right before she was about to completely dismiss my feelings. "Family helps family. Your sister needs this house more than you do." "That's not how property ownership works," I replied, my voice getting dangerously tight. "None of you are moving in here. This is my house." Mark, who had been brazenly measuring my living room windows with a tape measure he had apparently brought with him for this exact purpose, looked up with an annoyed frown. "Don't be so difficult, Chloe. The curtains from our apartment would fit these windows perfectly with just a small adjustment." I looked around the room in utter disbelief. Was this a prank? Was I in some kind of nightmare? In my own home, at my own party, my family was casually divvying up my property as if my years of back-breaking work and disciplined saving had somehow entitled them to the fruits of my labor. "I think there's been a massive misunderstanding," I said, trying one last time to regain some semblance of control over the situation. "I am not moving out. I am not sharing my house. I bought this place for myself." Olivia's face immediately darkened, her expression shifting from smug entitlement to raw anger. "You always were selfish. Some things just never change." "Selfish?" I repeated, my voice finally rising despite my best efforts to stay calm. "How is it selfish to want to keep the house that I saved for years to buy?" "Because family comes first," my mother declared, as if she were reciting a universal, indisputable truth. "Your sister has 3 children. They need the space more than you do." "Then perhaps you should have helped them save for their own house instead of expecting me to just hand over mine," I countered, surprising myself with the sharpness of my own words. The room had grown uncomfortably silent. The few remaining guests were witnessing the entire confrontation with wide, horrified eyes. Some of my coworkers were now actively shuffling toward the door, clearly desperate to escape. "I don't think you understand," Olivia said, her voice dropping to a dangerous, sweet tone that I recognized from our childhood fights. "We've already made plans. The kids are excited. We've even started looking at schools in this district." "Without ever once discussing it with me?" I asked, my voice laced with incredulity. "The actual owner of the house?" My mother sighed dramatically. "We knew you'd make a fuss." "You always do when you're asked to share. This is not about sharing," I exclaimed, my composure finally shattering into a million pieces. "This is about you assuming you can just take something that belongs to me." Olivia's twins had wandered over to my grandmother's antique china cabinet and were now smearing it with their sticky, jam-covered fingers. "Tyler, Jackson, be careful with that," I called out, moving to intercept them. "Don't you yell at my children," Olivia snapped. "They're just exploring their new home." "This is not their new home," I insisted, gently guiding the boys away from the priceless cabinet. "And this conversation is over. I appreciate you all coming to my housewarming, but I think it's time for you to leave." My mother gasped as if I had just slapped her across the face. "You would throw your own family out after everything we've done for you?" The sheer, staggering irony of that statement hit me like a physical blow. "Everything you've done for me? You mean like kicking me out at 18 to make room for Olivia? Like using my college fund to pay for her wedding? Please, Mom, tell me, what exactly do I owe you?" "That was different," Mom dismissed with a wave of her hand. "You were an adult." "And I'm still an adult," I shot back. "An adult who makes her own decisions about her own property." Olivia stepped so close to me that I could feel her breath on my face. Her voice dropped to a hissing whisper. "You need to pack your bags and find somewhere else to live. The kids are starting school here in the fall. We've already looked into the registration process." Mark nodded in agreement from across the room. "I've got a buddy with a truck who can help us move your stuff into a storage unit next weekend. You can take whatever you need for a small apartment. The rest can just stay here." "This is insane," I said, looking from one delusional family member to the next. "You can't just decide to take my house." "It's not just your house anymore," Mom stated firmly, her arms crossed over her chest. "Family property should be used according to need, and Olivia needs it more. You can find a nice one-bedroom apartment nearby." I looked around the beautiful room I had worked so hard to obtain, at the carefully chosen paint colors, the renovations I had meticulously planned, the garden I would never get to plant if they had their way. And in that moment, something inside me, something that had been bending and accommodating and shrinking my entire life, finally and irrevocably snapped. Standing there in my living room, surrounded by a handful of bewildered guests and my breathtakingly entitled family, I felt a profound shift deep within me. Years of suppressed anger, of biting my tongue, of swallowing disappointment after disappointment, it all crystallized into a sudden, clarifying rage. My hands were trembling slightly, but my mind had never been clearer. This moment, my sister laying claim to my house, my mother championing her cause, my brother-in-law measuring my windows for his curtains. It was just the latest verse in a lifelong song of being overlooked, dismissed, and perpetually expected to sacrifice. A cascade of memories flooded my mind. Olivia getting a brand new car for her 16th birthday, while I got a used bicycle with a rusty chain, my parents attending every single one of her school plays, while missing my valedictorian speech because someone had to stay home with Olivia's kids. The Christmas I received a multi-pack of practical socks, while Olivia unwrapped a designer handbag that cost more than my rent. "You know," Mark said, breaking the tense silence, "I think the basement could work as a pretty great man cave. I could put my recliner and my big screen TV down there. And we could turn that little room off the kitchen into a playroom," Olivia added, getting visibly excited by the theme. "The kids need somewhere to keep all their toys contained." I just watched them, mesmerized by their audacity as they continued to verbally carve up my home, assigning spaces and planning renovations as if my consent was a foregone conclusion. My mother nodded along, occasionally offering suggestions about furniture placement or paint colors. "You haven't heard a single word I've said," I finally interrupted, my voice flat and cold. "I am not giving you my house. I am not moving out. This discussion is over." Olivia rolled her eyes with theatrical flair. "You always were so stubborn." "This isn't just about you anymore, Chloe. Think about the children." "Oh, I am thinking about your children," I replied, my voice dangerously calm. "I'm thinking about setting an example for them. An example that shows them you can't just take whatever belongs to someone else simply because you want it." "Now you're just being petty," my mom interjected. "Your sister has 3 children. What could you possibly need all this space for?" "It doesn't matter what I need it for," and I said, looking her straight in the eye. "It is mine. I bought it. I worked for it." "While Olivia was raising a family," Mom countered, as if this were the ultimate trump card. "She didn't have the luxury of focusing only on herself." Luxury? The word struck me with the force of a physical blow. You think working 3 jobs to get through college was a luxury? You think living on instant noodles and sleeping 4 hours a night was a luxury? You think saving every single penny while you all took beach vacations and bought new cars was a luxury? "Here she goes with the dramatics," Olivia sighed to Mark, but loudly enough for the whole room to hear. "Always playing the victim." That one comment, so dismissive, so utterly blind to the reality of my life, so perfectly emblematic of how my family had always minimized my struggles, was the final straw. The room seemed to tilt slightly as all the blood rushed to my head. All the times I had swallowed my true feelings, all the times I had stepped aside for Olivia's needs, all the times I had quietly accepted less because that was what was expected of me. It all culminated in this one defining moment. "Get out," I said, my voice so quiet that Olivia had to lean forward. "Excuse me?" she asked, her eyebrows shooting up in feigned shock. "Get out of my house," I repeated, much louder this time. "All of you, now. You can't kick us out," my mother sputtered, her face flushing a deep mottled red. "We're your family." "Family doesn't try to steal from each other," I replied, my voice ringing with a conviction I didn't know I possessed. "Family doesn't dismiss each other's feelings or erase their achievements. Family is supposed to support each other." "We are trying to support each other," Olivia insisted, "by sharing our resources." "No," I corrected her, shaking my head. "You are trying to take what is mine, just like you have been doing our entire lives. And for the first time, I am finally saying no." Mark stepped forward, his friendly facade completely gone, replaced by a dark scowl. "You need to be reasonable, Chloe. Think about what's best for everyone. I have spent my entire life thinking about what's best for everyone else," I shot back. "For once, I'm thinking about what's best for me." "This is exactly why you're alone," Olivia said, her lips curling into a cruel sneer. "You're too selfish to ever maintain a real relationship." "No wonder you don't have a family of your own." The comment was a poison-tipped arrow, designed to wound, to hit me in my most vulnerable spot. In the past, it would have worked. I would have crumbled, apologized, and scrambled to prove I wasn't the selfish person they claimed I was. But something fundamental had changed inside me. Instead of pain, I felt a strange, chilling sense of clarity. "I would rather be alone," I said quietly, "than be surrounded by people who only see me for what they can take from me." Sarah, who had been watching the whole ugly confrontation with increasing alarm, finally stepped forward. "I think everyone just needs to calm down. Chloe, do you want me to ask some of the other guests to leave so your family can discuss this in private?" "There is nothing to discuss," I replied, my eyes locked on Olivia. They were just leaving. "We are not going anywhere until you agree to be reasonable," my mother stated, crossing her arms over her chest in a stubborn stance I recognized from 1,000 childhood standoffs, a stance that had always ended with me giving in. Not this time. "If you do not leave my property voluntarily," I said, pulling my phone from my pocket and holding it up, "I will call the police and have you removed for trespassing. Your choice." The threat hung in the air between us, a line drawn in the sand that could never be uncrossed. For a long, tense moment, nobody moved. Then Tyler, Olivia's middle child, knocked over a vase while chasing his brother. The sharp crash of breaking glass seemed to shatter the tension in the room. "Fine," Olivia spat, grabbing Tyler's arm roughly. "We'll go." But this conversation is not over. "Yes, it is," I replied. "It's been over for years. I just didn't realize it until today." As they gathered their things, my mother approached me one last time, her expression a bewildered mixture of disappointment and disbelief. "I raised you better than this," she said, her voice shaking. "No," I corrected her softly. "I raised myself better than this. That's why I'm finally standing up for myself." The front door closed behind them with a finality that should have felt like a victory. Instead, as I stood in my living room, surrounded by the few remaining uncomfortable guests who had just witnessed the complete implosion of my family, I felt a strange, hollow emptiness. The house that had represented so much promise and achievement now felt tainted by their greed and presumption. "I am so sorry about that," I said to the room at large, trying to piece my composure back together. Sarah immediately came over and wrapped a supportive arm around my shoulders. "You have absolutely nothing to apologize for," she assured me. "Nothing at all." But as the conversation slowly and awkwardly resumed, and my friends tried to steer the party back to its original celebratory purpose, I couldn't shake the ominous feeling that this confrontation was far from over. Olivia had never accepted defeat gracefully, and my mother had always been her biggest enabler. This time would be no different, except that I was different. The Chloe who had always given in, who had always made herself smaller, no longer existed, and in her place stood someone who recognized her own worth. And that woman was not giving up her house. The next morning, I woke up to a battlefield on my phone. 27 missed calls and more than double that number in text messages. Mom, Olivia, and even Mark had spent the night launching a coordinated assault, alternating between guilt trips, furious accusations, and transparent attempts at negotiation. The last message, sent at 3 a.m., was from Olivia. It read, "You will regret this. Family is forever, and you just threw yours away over a stupid house." I set my phone aside without responding. I made myself a cup of coffee and took it out to the back porch, watching the sun rise over my yard. My yard. The one no one could take from me. As I sat there in the cool morning air, a plan began to take shape in my mind. This vicious cycle of entitlement and emotional manipulation would never end unless I took decisive, unequivocal action to stop it. After finishing my coffee, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to my lawyer, the sharp woman who had handled the closing on my house. The second was to a local security company. The third was to Sarah, asking if she and a couple of other friends could come over that afternoon. By noon, I had printed out a stack of important documents and organized them neatly in a folder. The security company had already sent a technician who installed new smart locks and a doorbell camera. And my lawyer had drafted a formal cease and desist letter that would be delivered to Olivia, Mark, and my parents the following day. When the doorbell rang at exactly 1 p.m., I wasn't surprised to see Olivia and my mother standing there. What did surprise me was the presence of my father, who so rarely involved himself in these family conflicts, always preferring to let my mother handle the dirty work. The new security system had alerted me to their presence before they even rang the bell, giving me a few precious moments to steel myself. I opened the door. "Hello?" I said calmly, not stepping aside to let them in. "Can I help you?" "This has gone far enough, Chloe," my mother said, attempting to push past me into the house. "We need to talk about this like adults." "I agree," I replied, holding my ground and blocking the entrance. "That's why I've invited several friends over to witness our conversation. If you'd like to come back in 1 hour when they arrive, we can all talk together." "We don't need an audience for a private family discussion," Olivia snapped. "Recent experience suggests otherwise," I countered. 1 hour, your choice." They retreated to their car, huddling together in an agitated conversation while keeping a close watch on my house. I used the time to finalize my preparations and greet Sarah and 2 other close friends as they arrived. I had also invited my boss, David, who had become a mentor to me over the years. At precisely 2 p.m., my family returned. This time, I opened the door wide and invited them in, leading them to the living room where my friends were already seated. The atmosphere was thick with tension. Olivia shot venomous glares at Sarah, who had witnessed her outrageous behavior the previous day. "I don't understand why all these people need to be here," my mother said, perching uncomfortably on the edge of the sofa. "They're here to witness what happens next," I explained calmly, "so there can be no misunderstandings or rewriting of events later on." My father cleared his throat, a sound I hadn't heard in years. "Chloe, your mother and sister think you may have misunderstood their intentions yesterday." "Oh, I understood them perfectly," I replied. "They want me to give up my house so Olivia's family can live here." "Not give up," Olivia corrected quickly. "Share. We could pay you rent." "With what money?" I asked, my tone flat. "You've been asking me for loans every few months for years and have never once repaid them." She flushed a deep red but didn't deny it. That was different. This would be an official arrangement. "It doesn't matter," I said firmly. "I am not interested in any arrangement that involves me leaving my home or sharing it with you." "Then why did you buy such a large house?" my mother demanded. "It's excessive for one person." "Because I wanted to," I stated simply. "Because I worked hard, saved my money, and made smart career choices that you had nothing to do with. This is the result. I don't need to justify my purchase to you or anyone else." "You have always been selfish," Olivia began, but I held up a hand to stop her. "Before this goes any further, I want to show you all something," I said, reaching for the folder I had prepared. I pulled out a series of photos and handed them to my father first. "These are pictures of my first apartment after college, the one I could barely afford while working 60 hours a week." He scrolled through them silently, his face unreadable as he took in the images of the tiny studio with its hot plate instead of a kitchen, the single mattress on the floor, the milk crates I used as bookshelves. "And these," I continued, pulling out a stack of printed bank statements, "are my savings account statements from the past 8 years. Every single month I put aside at least 30% of my income, often more. I packed my lunch every day. I didn't take vacations. I drove the same car until it literally died on the highway." My mother glanced at the papers without really seeing them. "What is your point, Chloe?" "My point," I said, my voice unwavering, "is that this house did not just appear out of thin air. I earned it. I sacrificed for it. I bled for it." "While I was raising 3 children," Olivia interjected, "I didn't have the luxury of focusing only on my career." "That was your choice," I replied evenly, "just as this was mine." "Choices have consequences, Chloe," my mother stated in that familiar, righteous tone. "And your choice to prioritize material things over people has left you all alone." "And your choices are about to have consequences too," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. I took out my phone and pulled up several documents I had scanned earlier that day. "This," I said, showing it to them, "is the deed to my house, clearly stating that I am the sole owner." I swiped to the next document. "This is my mortgage agreement, in my name only." Another swipe. And this is the homeowner's insurance policy that protects my investment. They just stared at me with confused expressions, clearly not understanding where I was going with this. What you all need to understand, I continued, is that I knew this day might come. I knew that at some point you would try to take what belongs to me, just as you have been doing my entire life. I swiped to another document. This is a letter from my lawyer, dated the day I closed on this house. It outlines my concerns about potential family claims on my property and establishes a clear, legal record that I never intended to share ownership or residency. Olivia's face had gone pale, while my mother's cheeks were flushed with anger. My father just looked tired, as if he had seen this coming all along. And this, I said, showing them the final document, is a copy of the cease and desist letter that will be delivered to each of you tomorrow, legally prohibiting you from making any further claims on my property or harassing me about it. You would sue your own family? My mother gasped. If necessary, yes, I replied calmly. I will protect what is legally mine from anyone who tries to take it, family or not. Remember when you kicked me out at 18? I asked, looking directly at my parents. You told me I was an adult and I needed to make my own way in the world. Well, I did. I bought this house with the money I earned while working multiple jobs, saving every penny and making smart investments. This house represents every single sacrifice I have made, every long night I worked while you were all sleeping comfortably in the home you denied me. The silence that followed was profound. Sarah and my other friends sat quietly, their presence a tangible wall of support as I finally, fully spoke my truth. You have two choices now, I continued. You can accept that this is my house and that I will do with it as I please. Or you can continue this campaign to take it from me, in which case our relationship will be permanently and irreparably damaged, and the matter will be handled through legal channels. You would choose a house over your family? Olivia asked, her voice smaller than I had ever heard it. No, I corrected her. I am choosing myself over people who have never respected my boundaries or celebrated my achievements. I am choosing to break the pattern where I give and you take. I'm choosing to value the years of hard work that went into buying this home. My mother stood up abruptly. I cannot believe you are being so cold. After everything we have done for you. What exactly have you done for me, Mom? I asked quietly. Please remind me. Her mouth opened and closed a few times, but no specific examples seemed to come to mind. Instead, she just grabbed her purse and headed for the door. Come on, Olivia. Mark, we're leaving. Olivia hesitated, her eyes sweeping around the beautiful room one last time with an expression of naked longing before she followed our mother. Mark trailed behind them, shooting me a look that was part anger and part something that might have even been a sliver of respect. My father remained seated after they left, staring down at his hands for a long moment. I should have stepped in a long time ago, he finally said, his voice raspy. Your mother and your sister, they've always been a force of nature. It was just easier to go along. Easier for who, Dad? I asked. He nodded, acknowledging the painful truth in my question. I'm proud of you, Chloe. For this house, for standing up for yourself. I should have said that more often. His words, while appreciated, came decades too late to fill the void his silence had created. Thank you, I said simply, but I need you to leave now, too. After he departed, my friends surrounded me with supportive words and hugs. Sarah squeezed my hand. That was incredible. How do you feel? I considered the question for a moment. Lighter, I finally said, like I just put down a weight I've been carrying my entire life. What happens now? David asked. Now, I said, looking around at my beautiful home, I finally get to enjoy what I've worked for. Without guilt, without fear, and without ever apologizing for my success. For the first time since I'd bought it, I felt fully, completely at home. This was my space, earned through my own efforts, protected by my own courage, and now, finally, free from the long, dark shadow of family obligation that had followed me for so long. The days following that final confrontation brought an eerie, unsettling silence from my family. The cease and desist letters were delivered as planned, but there was no immediate explosion, no angry calls, no tearful texts, no relatives dispatched to make me see the error of my ways. The silence itself was a strange and foreign language. In my family's typical dynamic, conflicts like this would spawn extended, dramatic campaigns of guilt and manipulation, not quiet withdrawal. I used the unexpected respite to truly settle into my home. I painted the master bedroom a soothing sage green, installed the bookshelves in my home office, and started preparing the soil in the backyard for a vegetable garden. Each simple act felt like a powerful declaration. This space is mine. These choices are mine. This life is mine. A week passed before the silence finally broke. The first salvo came in the form of a group email from Olivia, sent to our entire extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins, with the subject line, "Chloe's Betrayal." In it, she wove a florid, victim-laden narrative about how I had cruelly abandoned my family, choosing a material possession over the needs of her 3 innocent children. She conveniently omitted the part where she had publicly announced she was taking my house for herself. The responses from relatives trickled in over the next few days. Some reached out to me directly, curious to hear my side of the story. Others, predictably, accepted Olivia's version without question, sending me sanctimonious messages about family, loyalty, and selfishness. A few, thankfully, remained neutral, recognizing the familiar pattern of Olivia's entitlement from countless previous family dramas. My Aunt Carol, my mom's older sister and the unofficial family matriarch, surprised me with her response. "I have watched this dynamic play out your entire life," she wrote in a private email. "It is about time you stood up for yourself. Your mother and sister will never change unless they are forced to. Stay strong." Her support was a small, unexpected gift, and I cherished it. I had always assumed the entire extended family saw me through the same distorted lens my parents did, as the less important daughter, the one who was built to accommodate and sacrifice. The next phase of their campaign began when my mom started calling our mutual friends. She would share her deep distress over my supposed mental state, suggesting that my financial success had changed me for the worse, making me cold and unstable. One of my friends, Megan, called to warn me. "Your mom reached out to me," she said, her voice laced with concern. "She's telling people you had some kind of breakdown and have turned against your family. She actually suggested that we should all check on you because you might be having a crisis." The social media campaign followed shortly after. Olivia began posting vague but pointed memes and articles about toxic family members and those who turn their backs on children in need. She shared saccharine posts about the unconditional importance of family, all while conveniently ignoring the conditions she had tried to place on mine. My lawyer advised me to document everything, but to avoid any direct engagement that might escalate the situation. The first real test came 3 weeks after the confrontation, when my mom showed up unannounced at my front door. The doorbell camera alerted me to her presence, giving me a moment to compose myself before answering. "Chloe," she said, her voice trembling just enough to be noticeable. "We need to talk." "I'm not having this conversation again, Mom," I replied, keeping the door mostly closed. "Your sister is devastated," she continued as if I hadn't spoken. "The children keep asking when they can see their new house. Tyler has already told all his friends at school that he's moving to a big house with a yard." "That's unfortunate," I said, my voice perfectly even. "But it is not my problem that Olivia made promises she had no right to make." My mom's expression hardened. "How can you be so cold? These are your niece and nephews." "I love them," I clarified, "but that does not mean I owe them my house." "No one is saying you should just give them your house," she backpedaled, trying out a new strategy. "But perhaps you could help them with a down payment. on their own place. You clearly have the money to spare." The request might have sounded reasonable to an outsider who didn't know our history, but I recognized it for what it was, just another attempt to extract resources from me, repackaged in a more palatable form. "I will not be discussing my finances with you," I stated firmly. "Now, I have a work call in 5 minutes. Goodbye, Mom." As I closed the door, I heard her call out, "This isn't over, Chloe." But for me, it was. The old pattern, where I would eventually cave under the relentless pressure, where my boundaries would dissolve in the face of persistent guilt, was broken. The person I used to be, the daughter who was so desperate for a scrap of approval that she would sacrifice anything to get it, no longer existed. The next attempt came from Mark, who coincidentally ran into me at the local grocery store. His tactic was different, man-to-man, reasonable, businesslike. "Look, Chloe," he said, blocking my path in the produce aisle, "I think we all got off on the wrong foot. Olivia can be emotional, you know how she is, but I've been thinking, and I have a compromise." "There is no compromise needed," I replied, trying to maneuver my cart past him. "The house is mine." End of discussion. "Just hear me out," he persisted. "What if we bought into the house? We could become co-owners. We could even convert the basement into a separate apartment for you to live in." The audacity was almost impressive. "So, your compromise is that I give up most of my house and move into my own basement?" He had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "Well, when you put it that way, it sounds bad. But family helps family, right?" "Please move out of my way," I said, my voice dangerously low, "and do not approach me again." As I walked away, I heard him mutter, "Ice Queen." The insult, which once would have devastated me and sent me into a spiral of people-pleasing, now just rolled right off me. I finally recognized it for what it was, a manipulation tactic, designed to make me question my own perfectly reasonable boundaries. But the most difficult moment came a week later, when Olivia sent the children to my house by themselves one Saturday afternoon. Tyler and Madison stood on my doorstep, their small faces a mixture of confusion and hope, clearly sent as emotional leverage. "Aunt Chloe," Madison said, her voice sounding rehearsed, "we came to see our new bedrooms. Mommy said you just needed some time to get used to the idea of sharing." My heart ached for them. They were just innocent pawns in their mother's twisted game. "Your mom was wrong to tell you that, sweetie," I said gently, crouching down to their level. "This is my house, and you are not moving in here." Tyler's little face crumpled. "But Mommy already gave away some of our old toys. She said we would get all new ones for our new big house." The manipulation was so transparent, so cruel in its use of her own children, that it only strengthened my resolve. "I'm sorry she did that," I told them. "That wasn't fair to you. But this is not your new house." "Mommy said you're being selfish," Tyler informed me with the brutal, unfiltered honesty of a 7-year-old. "Sometimes adults disagree about things," I explained. "It doesn't make either person bad. Now, how about some cookies before I take you home?" After feeding them cookies and milk at my kitchen island, I drove them back to Olivia's cramped apartment. She opened the door with a triumphant expression that faltered when she saw me standing right behind her children. "You sent your children to do your dirty work," I said quietly, making sure they couldn't hear. "That's a new low, Olivia. Even for you." "I don't know what you're talking about," she replied, but her eyes shifted away from mine. "They just wanted to see their aunt. Do not use your children as pawns in your games ever again," I warned, my voice like steel. "The next time you do, I will call Child Protective Services." Her face went white. "You wouldn't dare." "Try me," I replied, before turning and walking away without another word. That night, alone in my quiet, peaceful house, I finally allowed myself to feel the full weight of what had happened. The family I had so desperately longed to please, to be accepted by, had revealed their true nature so completely. What they offered was never really love in the first place. I walked through my house, touching the walls, the countertops, the furniture I had so carefully selected. This space represented not just financial security, but emotional liberation. For the first time in my life, I had stood firm in my own worth. And though the cost had been high, the reward, this quiet, unassailable peace, was incalculable. The next morning, I changed my phone number, updated my email address, and locked down all my social media privacy settings. I didn't block my family entirely, that door remained slightly ajar, but I created enough distance to allow myself to heal without constant intrusion. Then, I did something I had been postponing. I invited my friends over for a proper housewarming, a celebration completely unmarred by family drama. As we toasted with champagne in my living room, Sarah raised her glass. "To Chloe," she said, her eyes shining, who finally realized her own worth. The glasses clinked together, and in that moment, surrounded by people who genuinely celebrated my success, I felt truly, finally, at home. 6 months passed, transforming my house from a recent purchase into a real home. The garden I had planted now flourished with tomatoes, peppers, and herbs. My home office was complete, with custom-built bookshelves holding a growing collection of business and psychology books. Each room was a reflection of my personality and my preferences, untainted by compromise or concession. After the dramatic confrontation with my family, I had made a conscious decision to focus on healing. Weekly therapy sessions with a woman named Dr. Evans helped me unpack the toxic dynamics that had shaped our relationships and my own role in maintaining those unhealthy patterns. I learned about emotional boundaries, familial trauma, and the crucial difference between misplaced guilt and genuine responsibility. What you're experiencing is common for the family scapegoat who finally breaks free, Dr. Evans explained during one session. Your family created a narrative where you were the one expected to sacrifice for everyone else. When you refused to play that role anymore, it threatened their entire system. Will they ever understand? I asked, a question that still haunted me. Will they ever see that what they asked of me was wrong? She gave me a gentle, knowing smile. That's not something you can control, Chloe. Your task is to heal yourself, not to convince them. That truth was a difficult pill to swallow, but it was ultimately liberating. I couldn't change their perception of me, but I could change how their perception affected me. Gradually, the guilt that had plagued me for my entire life began to recede. The critical voice in my head that constantly questioned my right to prioritize my own needs grew quieter. My professional life flourished during this period of intense personal growth. The confidence I had gained from standing up for myself translated into a new assertiveness at work. I pitched bold new ideas, led team projects with newfound authority, and successfully negotiated a promotion that was long overdue. David, my boss and mentor, commented on the change. "Whatever happened earlier this year, it transformed you," he observed after I successfully presented a major project to the company's executive leadership. "You've always been talented, Chloe, but now you own your expertise in a new way." The promotion came with a significant salary increase, allowing me to accelerate my mortgage payments and start a new aggressive investment portfolio. Financial security had always been important to me, which was unsurprising given my experience of being cut off at 18. But now, it represented something more than just survival. It was tangible proof that I could provide for myself, that I didn't need to depend on family connections or their approval to thrive. My social circle also expanded and deepened. Without the constant draining effort of trying to please my family, I had so much more emotional energy for my friendships. I joined a local book club, started taking advanced cooking classes, and began volunteering at a mentorship program for first-generation college students. These activities brought new people into my life, people who knew me only as I was now, not as the accommodating daughter and sister I had once been. Sarah remained my closest friend, a constant source of support and honest feedback. One evening, as we were sharing a bottle of wine on my back patio, she brought up my family. "Have you heard from them at all?" she asked gently. I nodded. Mom sends a text every few weeks, very surface level, hope you're well, kind of messages. Nothing about what happened. And Olivia? Nothing directly, I said, but I heard through a cousin that things aren't going so well for them. Mark lost his job, and they had to downsize to an even smaller apartment. Do you feel bad about that? I considered the question carefully. I feel bad for the children. They didn't create this situation, but do I feel responsible for it? Number. Their financial struggles existed long before they tried to take my house, and they would still exist even if I had given in to their demands. That's growth, Sarah observed, smiling. The old Chloe would have found a way to make their problems her responsibility. She was right. For years, I had operated under the flawed belief that family obligation trumped all other considerations, including my own well-being. Breaking free from that mindset had been painful, but it was absolutely necessary. 3 weeks later, I received an unexpected email from my father. Unlike my mom's superficial check-ins, his message acknowledged what had happened. I have been doing a lot of thinking, he wrote, about the way your mother and I parented you and Olivia, about the unfair expectations we placed on you. I can't speak for them, but I want you to know that I see now how wrong we were. I am so proud of the woman you have become, despite our failures. If you are ever open to it, I would like to meet for coffee sometime. No pressure, no agenda, just a father hoping to get to know his daughter better. The email brought tears to my eyes. Not because it erased the past, but because it represented something I had never, ever expected: acknowledgement. I didn't respond right away. I took time to process my feelings and discuss it with Dr. Evans. Do you want to see him? She asked. I think I do, I admitted. Not to forgive and forget, but to see if there's anything there worth salvaging. Our first meeting was awkward but revealing. My dad seemed smaller somehow, less the intimidating, distant figure of my childhood, and more a flawed, aging man filled with regrets. We talked cautiously at first, sticking to safe topics like my job and his garden, but eventually he brought up the past. I let your mother handle most of the parenting, he said, staring into his coffee cup. It was easier than arguing with her, but that meant I failed to protect you when I should have. Yes, I agreed simply. You did. He nodded, accepting the truth without defensiveness. I can't change that. But I want you to know that I see it now, and I am so sorry. That one coffee meeting led to another, and gradually we began to build a new kind of relationship. It wasn't the close father-daughter bond I had longed for as a child, but it was an honest connection between two adults. He never pressured me to reconcile with my mom or Olivia, respecting the boundaries I had so carefully established. 9 months after the confrontation, I received a text from Olivia that completely surprised me. Can we talk? Just us. After discussing it with Dr. Evans and thinking it through carefully, I agreed to meet her at a neutral location, a quiet coffee shop halfway between our homes. She arrived looking more subdued than I had ever seen her. There was no dramatic entrance, no attention-seeking behavior. Thank you for meeting me, she said as she sat down across from me. What did you want to talk about, Olivia? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. She twisted her wedding ring nervously. Things have been hard. Mark lost his job. We had to move again. The kids are struggling with all the changes. I waited, fully expecting the conversation to pivot toward what I could do to help them. Money, perhaps, or allowing them to stay with me temporarily, but she surprised me. I've been seeing a therapist, she continued. It's part of my recovery program. Recovery program? I repeated, confused. I'm an addict, she said quietly. A shopping addict, mainly. Spending money we don't have to feel better for a little while. That's why we were always broke. Always needing your help. My therapist says I use material things to fill emotional holes. The admission shocked me to my core. I had always seen Olivia as entitled, spoiled, and selfish. But addiction? That had never once occurred to me. "How long?" I asked. "Years," she admitted, "but it got much worse after the kids were born." Postpartum depression that I never really addressed. Buying things gave me a high when I felt worthless. For the first time in my life, I saw my sister not as my rival or my oppressor, but as someone who was fighting her own difficult battles. It didn't excuse her behavior or erase the years of hurt she had caused, but it helped me understand it in a different light. "I'm not asking for money," she clarified, seeming to read my thoughts, "or a place to stay. I'm working my program, and part of that is making amends where possible. I know I can never fully make up for trying to take your house or for all the years of taking advantage of you, but I want you to know that I see it now, and I am sorry." The words I had never, ever expected to hear from her hung in the air between us. They didn't magically heal decades of hurt, but they did crack open a door I had long assumed was permanently sealed and bolted shut. "Thank you for saying that," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. "I appreciate your honesty." We talked for over an hour, more openly and honestly than we ever had in our entire lives. She spoke about her struggles with motherhood, her deep-seated resentment of my freedom, and her dawning realization that she had been enabled by our parents rather than truly supported. "Mom still doesn't get it," she admitted with a wry, tired smile. "She thinks my problem is that I don't have enough, not that I was using shopping to self-medicate." "That sounds like Mom," I agreed, and we shared a small, sad smile of mutual recognition. As we prepared to leave, Olivia asked, Do you think we could ever try to have some kind of relationship? Not like before. Something healthier. The kids miss you." "I miss them too," I admitted. "Let's start small. Maybe I could take them to the park sometimes, or have them over for dinner occasionally." Her face lit up with genuine relief. "They would love that." We parted with a tentative, awkward hug. It wasn't a complete reconciliation, but it was the beginning of something new, a different kind of relationship, one built on a fragile foundation of honesty, rather than a toxic one of obligation. Over the following months, I gradually reintroduced my niece and nephews into my life. They visited my home not as future residents, but as welcome guests. I established clear boundaries with Olivia about these visits, and to my surprise, she respected them. My relationship with my mom remained more distant. She continued to send her occasional, superficial texts, but she never showed any real acknowledgement of past patterns or any interest in changing her current ones. I came to accept that some relationships cannot be transformed, only managed from a safe and healthy distance. As the 1-year anniversary of buying my house approached, I planned a small dinner party to celebrate. It wasn't a housewarming this time, but a homecoming to myself. The guests included Sarah, David and his wife, my new friends from the book club, and after careful consideration, my father and my sister's family. As we all gathered around my dining room table, I looked at the faces of these people who represented different chapters of my life, past, present, and future. Some relationships had been healed, others transformed, and a few left behind, but all of them had taught me something vital about myself and my own worth. After dinner, as we were enjoying dessert on the back patio under a string of twinkling lights, my dad raised his glass. "To Chloe?" he said, his voice full of a pride I had never heard before. "And to her beautiful home." "To standing your ground," Sarah added with a grin. "To new beginnings," Olivia offered quietly from across the table. I raised my own glass, feeling a profound and unshakable sense of peace. "To building a life that truly belongs to you," I said, "and to surrounding yourself with people who celebrate that, rather than try to take it away." As laughter and conversation filled the warm night air, I reflected on the incredible journey of the past year. The house that had started as a battleground had transformed into a sanctuary. It was more than just a physical space. It was a symbol of my right to define my own life on my own terms. The path to this moment had been painful, but I wouldn't trade the clarity and strength I had gained for anything. Sometimes the most valuable lessons come from the hardest experiences, and sometimes you have to lose what you thought was family to finally find your true home. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who tried to take advantage of your success? How did you handle it? Drop a comment below and share your experience. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about setting boundaries and reclaiming your power. Thank you for listening. And remember, your success is yours to celebrate, not for others to claim. End of story.